Is close to the Alamo Dome. That's your, whatever it is, Sky News. And I try to always do one. This might be the last one for today. That is your Alamo Dome down there. Should be able to see it. And I'll share a little bit of what I read last night. I was just reading some of the Psalms. One of the Psalms, the one I read, I forget which one it is, but I remember how David says, though war rises up against me, yet in this thing will I be confident. So he's talking about, it's interesting because you would think as a warrior king that he's in the middle of many wars, and if the enemies were coming around him, the one thing that he was confident in was he would seek God and he would dwell in the house of the Lord forever, behold the beauty of the Lord and inquire in his temple. And I always liked that every time I read that, because when he's at battle, the thing that was his confidence was not that he had a bunch of troops and he had a stronghold, which he did have, the city Jerusalem, when David took it as his capital, which I taught in the book of Samuel. Jerusalem became known as the city of David. And it was a stronghold, and it was a fortress city, the city of Jerusalem. And it was David's capital. And that city, if you remember my teaching on Samuel, there were people that possessed that city. They were called Jebusites. And they, as the children of Israel inherited the promised land in the book of Joshua, it's interesting because Jerusalem itself was not initially taken because these people that were in there held on to it. And there's even one of the little parable that talks about, like, can David take it? He'll never take it. He did, and he established it. And there's another scripture. Sometimes I quote it when I'm by the Alamo. I'm close to the Alamo right now. But it says, David dwelt in the fort, and he called it the city of David. And he built round about from the surrounding terraces and inward. And the Lord was with David. And the Lord blessed King David for the sake of his people Israel. But yet David, as a warrior king, his confidence was he would be in the presence of God, behold the beauty of the Lord, and inquire in his temple. So David's confidence was not even in his survival, meaning his confidence wasn't, I have enough protection where I'm not going to be killed. That was not his confidence, because he knew he was going to go the way of all the earth one day. His confidence was he would be in the presence of God, inquire of God, no matter what's going on. And even in his death, which would happen someday, he knew he would continue to be in that presence. See, everything in a big debate politically, I was going to make one comment on some local issues of Corpus Christi. I try to do a little news. We're having another mayoral election. Those know why we're doing it. But you have a bunch of candidates, and there's one lady, I think her name, I read it, but I think it's Fratilla. She's a lady that was an immigrant and supposedly had a very interesting story coming to the States, the United States. Well, the Color Times pretty much had to cover that she kind of seems to be lying a lot about her past. She claimed she spoke before one of the women's clubs and claimed to be a former Olympic athlete, and that seemed to be false. And she made other things in her resume that she gave to the Color Times, and said George W. Bush was going to endorse her book and a future movie coming out, and they contacted the Bush people. They said, no, that's false. And so it does seem like the reason we're having this special election for mayor is because the former mayor lied about his credentials. The one who won an upset win over Nelda Martinez. And so that's kind of why we're doing this. And the Caller Times wanted to be able to say we're going to thoroughly vet the candidates. And so they showed numerous articles. I think they probably did enough by now. They probably don't. You could call it now, they're going to be piling on, because they did the good job, Caller Times, in exposing the reality that the lady seems to lie about things, okay? And she seemed to, have a problem with that. But we're having the election, and, I don't endorse people. I don't think the Caller Times endorsed Nelda, the former mayor. Right now, the city's going through a lot of problems, a lot of difficulties. But in keeping with what I just said in the beginning, if this is the last one for today, I always like to do one when I'm up here. All of what the country is upset about, all of the political arguments we have, why are you critical, John, of Chuck Schumer? Look, the reality, Schumer himself, I don't need to go back and find video. I remember, I watched a lot of news. Schumer himself said the Obama, because when the Democrats, after the Democrats passed Obamacare, then they had the loss. They lost the majority in the House and Senate. And the Republicans still hold the majority. But when that happened, it was a big political defeat for the Democrats. And Schumer himself said it was a mistake, that the Obamacare passage and Obama himself pushing it was a mistake. Former President Bill Clinton honestly said about 8 months ago, made some media, that it was a disaster, Obamacare, because you had a lot of people that were working people that were losing a lot of their former employer coverage. We were covered at fire department. We had city insurance covered us, but of course it was a private insurance. We had some very good health insurance. But one of the bad things about Obamacare was a lot of people that had employer coverage, because it made it very expensive, some of the rules of Obamacare. So a lot of employers decided to just dump the coverage for their employees, put them into the system, and then pay a fine. So even Bill Clinton admitted it was disastrous. So the hypocrisy is, if you sat down in a room with every Democrat and said, you were all acknowledged, including one of the most popular Democratic presidents, who was Bill Clinton, you all acknowledged publicly that there were tremendous problems with Obamacare. Now, let's just say every Democrat in the room, no Republicans anymore. You got a full 400 and something Democrats in the House of Representatives and 100 Democrat senators, and Democrat president. You would still have to fix it. And any little, quote, tweak you would make, or any fix you would make, in order to fix what was acknowledged as problems, if the Republicans made any of those same little adjustments, you would call that a disaster. You would refer to the Republicans as destroying it. You would refer to them as wanting to kill your babies and children and kicking people off. But those, if you were honest, those would be the same tweaks or changes that you would have to make, acknowledged by your own people. So Pelosi and the others, when the House of Representatives did indeed pass it, and look, all the news is talking about all the changes. There are no changes made yet to anything. I don't know why. Oh, and these people are now losing it, and the mandate is no longer in existence. I'm glad they got rid of the mandate. But none of that is law yet. And it might be a month or two before what the House passed goes to the Senate. And it's real possible that the Senate is going to totally rework what the House just passed, quote Trump there. And it's possible it will never make it through the Senate. So there are actually no changes to the law yet. And only the few things that maybe Trump could do through executive order. But There's no changes yet. It's not passed yet, okay? It's not law yet. But that's consuming the politics. And they're just not honest. They're just not honest, because I just explained to you. Many prominent Democrats realized that there was a huge problem with Obamacare. Okay, they acknowledged that. But now they just see it as most of them are just seeing it as a political thing for them. Because on the House of Representatives, with Nancy Pelosi as the leader, were chanting songs on like, you guys are going to lose, the upcoming congressional elections, you're going to lose seats. How about really trying to fix something? How about really trying to do what is right? I don't think any of them are concerned with that. It's all politics. So if it's the last one, those are the only little news things I would hit on. I might try to add that psalm, but King David understood that though war rose up against him, in this will I be confident. One thing will I seek after, that I could dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, and to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple. That's the only thing that really, you see everything, James says, all flesh is as grass, and all the glory of everything that we have here in this life is as the flower. It's like the grass that gets mowed down. The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God endures forever. And David himself said, when I was doing the Samuel teaching, that he said, although my house is not right with God, he said, yet that the desire of God was fulfilled, that God spoke through him, and that God used him to give all those wonderful promises, that the dynasty would go on after him through his natural son Solomon, and ultimately Jesus is referred to as the son of David. So they were looking at eternal things. They were looking at eternal things. I got news for everybody about the healthcare. Everybody about, we are all going to die. That's the news. How many people will die because of a decision? Everybody's going to die. Everybody voting for it. Now you might die a little sooner, a little later, depending on your view politically. We're all going to die. This whole, so consumed in this country with self-preservation. Look, I want good health. Oh, good, a train's coming through. I love that. I want health care for people. I want everything to be good for people. We have a system you see me speak on that enables people that are truly indigent. It's sad. I hope maybe Crow is going to get to watch it. I was with Crow and Claire and my friends at the park the other day. And Claire was on the phone because Claire's homeless. And Claire does have some medical issues, and she hurt herself a few years ago, and I guess she's been trying to get disability. Now look, if anybody should be on disability, a woman that's homeless on the street that does indeed have all these problems, she should certainly get it. Not full-grown men perfectly able to work, and they've been on it for their entire lives. But Claire, they've been denying Claire. Women on the street that actually need it. They have no income, and they actually live in the street. So then I was with them when the disability and all was calling back and denying her. And then they called her back and said, well, we might have another benefit. And she answered the phone, and we were just sitting there. And they said, we might be able to help you pay for your utilities and light bill. And she just said, I'm homeless. I live in a tent, and hung up the phone. So what's the problem with the system? Women on the street. And that's not the first one. There was another lady, I even wrote a letter to Social Security complaining about a lot of things you see me talk about. I said, I got friends on the street that are addicts their whole lives. I said, and all the money I paid into your system, which I paid a lot in Social Security, I said, what you do, I wrote multiple ones like that over the years. I said, and what you're doing is you're contributing able-bodied men, people I know. You're giving them checks their whole lives and they're addicts. I said, you're not helping those people. I said, and then there was another lady, that's why I used her as an example. There was a lady up at Timmins maybe about 8 months ago. And she looked so pathetic. And I would always give her the dollar if I saw her. I mean, she's desperate. She's 50-something. But you could see the woman is like in need. She's the classic bag lady. And I do not believe she has an alcohol problem, but she's probably very sick because she was incontinent. Some of my friends, when they went to the bathroom anywhere, it meant a lot of them it was because they had colon cancer and stuff. And Shelby, an older man, died. But he's had that problem before he died. Well, this lady is right at that point. She's in her 50s. And I was at Timmins one day. And I feel bad when I see her. I don't remember her name. And she was talking about how she's been applying for disability. Now, these are women, and it was cold, actually. It was like in the 30s, because I wrote a letter about her. I said, now, this lady's on the street. She's going to freeze to death, and you just turned her down for disability, not because she didn't meet the standard. Supposedly, she was trying to get disability for years, maybe like Claire. They turned her down because she handed in her previous former employment that she had, and they lost it. They now said, we want you to go back to all of your previous employers, whatever state you were in, get all the documentation, and she's on the street. She has no ability to do that. But she was mad because she said, John, I gave them all that. This is a woman. And I wrote the letter. I said, now, if this lady freezes to death, because that was when we were in the very cold few weeks this past year. I said, if this lady freezes to death, I wrote that to Social Security. I said, I hold you personally responsible. And I've written letters to them saying, I would like you to give me all my money back, Social Security, because I paid about almost $200,000. I said, and what you do with my money? I said, I've seen you give it to guys that are well able to work, people that are addicts, and you've withheld it from women. I said, so in my mind, you used my money to contribute to the addiction in society. I wrote those. Okay, so we'll end it with that. I hope you liked the view. You got to see the train. I try to cover a couple of local news. I think the Dakota Times should lay off on Fertilla. She's a florist, and, you know, obviously I've had friends that embellished stories. It makes them feel better. Obviously, if the public read the stories on her, they're not going to vote for her, okay? We had early voting already. A lot of people voted early in our election. So we'll end it with that. Remember, the war rises up against you. In this, you're going to be confident that you're going to always dwell in the house of God. And even if you get shot by a drive-by right now, you're still going to be in that presence of God. That's your confidence. Not holding on to this thing here, because we're all going to die. It makes no difference. But yet, eternal life we have. Okay? Make sure you're in that. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He that believes on him is not condemned, but he that believes not is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God.